Hello and welcome to this episode of the Game Plan podcast by College Baseball Advisors. I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. My background is 30 years as a college baseball coach, current college baseball recruiting advisor. For more information about what I do, please visit my website, collegebaseballadvisor.com. On today's episode, we have Frank Holbrook, the new head coach at Brown University. Just around July 4th, he took over the program at Brown, a lifelong native of Rhode Island. This is a dream job for Frank, and we covered a lot about what's been on his plate since he took over the job, getting his staff together, getting his 2026 class together. We talked about life at Brown, recruiting, coaching, the fall, what the spring season is like. Obviously, we talked about his 2 years prior coaching at Northeastern with Mike Glavin and that experience. Prior to that, he was the head baseball coach at Rhode Island College for 5 years. And then a really interesting talk about from high school getting recruited to go play at Wheaton. After Wheaton actually started kind of down the road of going to law school, realized that was not the route he wanted to do, started to coach at Wheaton with Coach Podbelski, and then was able to go from there to take over the job at Rhode Island College. Along the way, played and was an assistant coach and the head coach at Newport Gulls. So really a good conversation covering lots of intricacies about coaching and, of course, the Ivy League and Brown University. I think you'll find that really informative. I'd like to remind you that this podcast is made possible through the sponsorship of the Mohegan Sun Baseball Coaches Convention. This convention has taken place 23 years. This year is January 15th to 17th, 2026 at the Mohegan Sun Casino. It's a fantastic event with a great lineup of coaches from high school, college, minor league pro players, a great venue with vendors and demonstration space, a cage, an infield, a great place to network, great place to learn about baseball and talk baseball. It's really, really fantastic. For more information about that, please visit their website, baseballcoachesclinic.com. And without further delay, here's my conversation with Frank Holbrook, head baseball coach at Brown University. All right. All right, Frank. So first of all, I'm happy to actually pin you down because I know between getting a new job in the summer and having a 1-year-old and having a wife that's a head coach of a soccer program, that you have a lot going on compared to I do. So I guess let's start off my first question, besides welcoming you here, is it's been a crazy couple of months, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, it's been an awesome, last 4 to 6 months, last year, to be honest. Us having our newborn and working through that season at Northeastern, which was an amazing run and an unbelievable, experience for me in coaching with some great people and some great players, and then being able to get the job back home in Rhode Island. It's all happened quick. I don't think I've really truly processed it. And I think over the holidays it'll probably hit me some more. But yeah, we're really excited, and it's been an awesome time here.
So what was the actual day this summer when you got the job, or about what was the day?
I want to say late June, June 20, somewhere in there. So it was towards the end of June, before the 4th of July, and that's when it was official. And obviously there were some weeks leading up to it. So, but that really, it all kind of rubbed right up against the end of the Northeastern season. So it's happened quick. But yeah, end of June.
And this is what I kind of want to cover with kind of what you've been dealing with getting this job. But what was like, okay, you've been named head coach. What was the first two or three things that you had to like tackle to get yourself up and running in this new job?
Yeah, so it was working with administration through the final steps of how we wanted to build out the coaching staff and what was available on their end. Obviously advocating for things that we wanted, from an admissions and recruiting side. But first couple of things were just getting the key to the office, and then getting some good coaches around me, right? And figuring out what I had to work with, to go get a great staff. And so it was, that was priority number one, was getting great coaches. And we were able to do that with, Coach Podbelski as our associate head coach and Andrew McKeon as our pitching coach. And then later throughout the summer, those two were really the first two, just because I knew if we could lock them up, they could get out recruiting, and they do a great job at that. And so the three of us just focused as soon as we were able to get that off the ground, and official, just recruiting, because we had a 2026 class to fill. We had, 8 or 9 slots to fill, and we worked quick with that. But I think, yeah, just getting the staff together, and then was able to add Coach Mike Marr, who played at Wheaton and was with the Worcester Bravehearts this summer with Luke Beckstein, who I coached in Newport and at Northeastern. So, and then Mike played at Wheaton for Coach Podbelski. So it was that was quick. And then we added 𝐃𝐿𝐧'𝐿, who's I've known for a while. He was the all-time wins leader at Bryant University. He lives down the street. He's got a full-time job, but I think that's one of the perks of having some local connections and guys that can come in and help. And so he's our director of pitch and development. He was with me at Rhode Island College. So really fortunate to have the staff that we have, and big kudos to the administration for giving us a little bit more resources to put together a good staff for these players.
So let's definitely tackle that a little bit. So these other two you mentioned, I really don't know well, and I would like to ask you about them. But let's start with, I guess let's start with McKeon. I mean, he's got a tremendous background coming from Salve Regina. So did you guys have a history together as friends, colleagues of any kind, or was it just like, hey, I know this guy is a heck of a coach and recruiter, I want to get him on board?
Yeah, so he's my age. He's in Rhode Island, so we've crossed paths over the years. I think the relationship started to form when his brother was at Wheaton playing for Coach Podbelski and I, and so we recruited his brother. Andrew's around the yard. He's starting to get into coaching. 5 years later, when I got the Rhode Island College job, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I got the Rhode Island College job, I recommended to Eric to grab Andrew. I thought he was a great young coach, pitching guy, great recruiter. Andrew had been at Anna Maria and Fitchburg and maybe a stop at Roger Williams or something like that. But, just respected him. He knew everyone in Rhode Island and the surrounding area. And just, so I got to know him through that. And then he went to Salve, and I think with what Coach Chiarella had already built, and he was able to add to it, and they went on an unbelievable run there. One of the best programs in the Northeast and in the country in Division III. Andrew specifically had some great pitching staff. Don Parachi was drafted in the 11th round out of Salve. Don pitched for me in Newport with the Gulls that junior year summer. So it's just constant. Constant. And then our families get to know each other, and before you know it, over the holidays, you're getting together for dinner and stuff like that. So known him for a while. It was obviously, one of my first outside of Coach Podbelski. That was pie in the sky. If I could get the two of them, I feel like I'd be in a good place. And, administration was able to make things happen. And we're really lucky to have Andrew.
And no question, but let's talk about getting Podbelski, who's a name for 30 years I can't pronounce. I look like an idiot. It's not that hard. I'm just an idiot. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
This says a lot about you, that he's going to leave this job that he is at and so successful for such a long time. And correct me if I'm wrong. I do notes and I've screwed them up before. You played for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Correct?
So he was at Wheaton. Yeah. He started it from scratch over there. 29 years, I think, officially. It was an all-female college. Once they went co-ed, they added baseball, and he started it from scratch and built it into, one of the best in the country and in the region, right? And then, yeah, like you mentioned, I played for him for for 4 years. I did it over 5 because of labrum surgery. But, we won the conference all 4 years. We went to the College World Series my junior year. We lost in the national championship, and then I jumped on board right after graduation to coach with him because he was just a great work ethic, great recruiter. Just a sustained success that he built at Wheaton was something that, you could learn so much from, not just taking a guy that doesn't take shortcuts and builds things the right way and does it by just, working hard and building great connections with players and coaches. And I think everyone around the region who knows him really respects him for the way he goes about his business. So he was a great mentor to me. When this job was coming, about, we talk, we always talk, over the years, just stay in touch. And, I jokingly said, how much would it take? Didn't really thinking much. And, I expected a laughter and move on. Right. But he paused and we talked it through a little bit, and it was, it was amazing, right, for me to be able to, coach with him again. We had a good run. We went back to the World Series when we were coaching together at Wheaton, got some really good recruiting classes. And, obviously I competed against him when I was at Rhode Island College. So we, that relationship continued, and to have him on staff is awesome. He's just a veteran coach who really knows what it takes to win. And he's already built a program, right? Like he built a program from scratch. I like to think, I was decently building up a program at Rhode Island College, but he has a great perspective, and to be able to do it with him here and Andrew, it's I think those two are great starts to the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously you must be excited when you got this job. I mean, it's a dream come true from where you're from, but getting these two guys on board with you, that's a heck of a job by you. And that, I mean, talk about getting a coaching staff that you want with those two guys. I'm really happy for you. And I talked to both of them during the course after you hired them, and they were both extremely psyched to be on board with you. So and
Yeah.
briefly tell me about the other two who I don't know, Mike and Pete.
Yeah, so Mike Marr, great young coach, right? So he played at Wheaton for Coach Podbelski, had a ton of success. Coach swore by him, and then he was with Luke Beckstein with the Worcester Bravehearts this summer, who I trusted really well. So those two had nothing but great things to say about him. He does a great job with our infielders. He throws great BP, works with our base running. He'll coach first base. He started to get out on the road recruiting, so I think it's a true good young coach who just wants to learn. And he speaks the same lingo. Going through the Wheaton program, there's certain ties there that you don't really have to talk through some things. You can
Right.
kind of just assume things are in place, right? So it was great to have that, and great to have him on board. He's really good with he does a lot of our speed work and strength and conditioning. He's involved with our position players on that. He's got a great background there. So he's just a good young coach that brings a lot of things to the table that we needed, right? And then Pete Kellich is our director of pitching development. He was the pitching coach at Rhode Island College my last 2 years, worked closely with Sean Gamlin, Andrew Sears, both playing pro ball still. And he was a big piece to that coaching staff. And we played together for the Newport Gulls in college. So we played together a summer down in Newport. We've been able to stay in touch. And then, he coached with me at Rhode Island College. So great pitcher for Steve Owens at Bryant, one of the all-time wins leaders there. Got drafted by the Padres, and just a steady hand who knows the game and is a great help. So he lives right down the road. He's got two young boys, and his wife, they live right up the road in Pawtucket. So it was a great fit.
And in terms of like, I haven't really asked this. Like, I know enough to know, but I think this is a good one to ask because I obviously see this popping up in the last 3 years at all these various colleges. This director
Yeah.
of pitching development. In your mind, what does that job entail? What's the job description with that?
Yeah, I think, I think typically you think like data analytics being kind of that driver of that bus there. Coach McKeon does a great job with our track. We have a portable TrackMan stadium TrackMan. We have a kid, Joe Mullis, who was actually at Northeastern for 2 years. He does a lot of our TrackMan stuff and collecting all the data for us and organizing it. So I think those two really tackle that side of it. Pete, I don't want to say it was just a title, but it was a title, and it's where his experience is, right? Is just as a guy who can really teach guys how to pitch. Andrew is the pitching coach. You'll see if you come to practice, you'll see Pete working with catchers. I think they're really tied into the pitching and bridging that gap. He's in the bullpen hanging out. He's throwing BP. But at the end of the day, he's pulling a lot of guys aside and just having conversations about what wins at each level and what guys need to work on. And he's got a good temperament about him. So he's working with Andrew on that side of things, working with our catchers, throws a ton of batting practice, and is just a veteran voice who's seen a lot of winning baseball, right? Whether it's from Bryant with the Padres. He was, a Hall of Fame guy for the Newport Gulls, and he's just a winner. So it's awesome to have him around.
All right, that's a great overview of that group. It sounds like you have a,
Yep.
a great group in place. Obviously, another thing to tackle, as you had said, is now you get the job, if you will, late summer, and now you got to get the staff, and then you got to get your 26 class. Pretty mad scramble in terms of like,
Yeah.
yeah, talk about.
Yeah.
I assume you're done now with 26s, pretty much.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
We finished up late August, right? So we got hired in June, and it was about 8 weeks, 9 weeks to put we have 9 commitments that we put together, right? So there were a couple that I had been following at Northeastern. I think there's a little bit of crossover with the type of kid that we're going after there. Both academic schools here in the Northeast. Obviously, all of our ties with people like yourself and travel programs and recruiting people. They're heavy here, and I think for us, knowing what we're getting, it's an Ivy League school. We're not going to build this thing through the transfer portal and bring in
No.
5, 6, 7 guys a year, right? So we have to know what we're getting. We have to know we're getting a great player, but a great competitor and a great person, right? So I think the first couple steps were just those local guys that you'd build great connections with who are still uncommitted, and we were able to grab a few of those right away, right off the bat. When you look at the whole class, there's nine players coming in. I want to say 3 from Mass, 1 from Connecticut, and then the rest are spread around the country. So about half and half in terms of Northeast New England boys, and then guys from all over the country. So yeah, we hit the ground running. I think the day after I was hired, first day on the job was like get my ID, get my office key, and then how can I book a flight down to Georgia? And I was in Georgia the next morning, for 3 or 4 days, and then onboarding Andrew and Eric to officially be able to go out and do their thing. And then, we were traveling the country, traveling New England, and it was a mad rush, a couple prospect camps. And I know I talked to you. I feel like I talked to and forgot to talk to, a lot of people that came across the phone, and it was a lot. And then switching cell phone services over, trying to keep my number. It was just like every day was a new task, but it was a great class that we're bringing in, and we're excited about the guys. And I think Andrew and Eric they did a great job working the three of us together and just piecing it together right away to put together a great class.
Yeah, I remember like I was texting you a couple times and you weren't getting back to me. I'm like, I said, Frank, you pissed off at me? Like, did I do? And I kind of knew you just listen. I really knew you
Yeah.
had 10 million things and you had other things to tackle. But and in my position of advising people, it's amazing. I mean, I could literally do whole podcasts on this, and I'm not, but which is
Yeah.
camps. Are they a money grab? And people, and I said to me, anyone I worked with, I said, if you're interested in Brown, this is a great time. There's a new staff together. They're running prospect camps for the sole purpose of looking for players, right? So like
Yeah.
they're I mean, and I guess I wanted to ask you, did you from your prospect camps that you ran, did you find some of those 9 guys that
Yeah, I'd say at least 2 or 3 were at the camp. Of the 9, actually one, two, three were at camp. And we knew we saw him play, but it's tough. Like I talked about in the beginning, we see these New England guys play. You go out, you see them 6, 7 times. You have a good feel for them as competitors. You see their good days, you see their bad days. You kind of, as much as I love all of you guys, you're there to sell your guys, right? And so for us, it's try to cut through the meat of it. And like I said, that's why we had a great connection in New England. And I think our first couple commits were around here because we have trusted contacts here, right? And then it's about building it out and seeing players play. And even if it's a contact that we trust, we want to see them play multiple times. So when you get
right?
out of region and you fly down to Georgia and you see a kid have a good day and then you fly back, but that's all you know about him, it's trying to work through that. So looking up his stats, talking to his high school coaches, talking to his travel coach, doing a deep dive on the social media and just trying to, dig and dig and dig to see how much info you can get on a kid, right? So I think the prospect camps are a great spot for that second contact, first contact. You see someone play, you're like, I like him. I'd like to see again. Let's get him up to campus. And I think around prospect camps, we probably do 4 or 5 visits set up with kids already signed up for the camp because it's sincere interest. We're not just saying, "Hey, come up here for a
Right.
money grab." It's
Right.
it's how can we see you, get to know you as a person, and figure out, are you the right fit for the next 4 years, here at Brown to help build this program.
Yeah, and a couple of things that but people don't. You can't do tryouts. You can't say pop up next Thursday, throw a pen for us. We'll tell you if we like it. It's
Yeah.
not allowed. That's why there are camps in the first place. And this is me saying to you, but other people, I never try to sell any player I'm working with. I only simply say, and even when I'm about to work with someone, I say, I can't promise you I'll get you recruited at XYZ. What I can promise you is I will let the coach know about you. The coach will evaluate you and give me honest feedback. You've seen my guys
Yeah.
and you've said, I don't think he's good enough. That's all I ask of people is to say, hey, just give this kid a look. I think he's in your
Yeah.
ballpark, but ultimately you're the head coach of the program to know, hey, this guy is a fit or is not a fit based on all the other recruits we have. And what people don't realize, and again, I'm kind of speaking to the choir, you brought in a class of 9 in the 26 class from thousands and thousands that would love to go to Brown, but either don't have the grades,
Yep.
don't have the skill, don't have the character, whatever else you're looking for. It's extremely, extremely competitive. One last question on the recruiting piece.
Yep.
Is it a similar at Northeastern, which I obviously want to talk about after? I don't know enough about the makeup of the Northeastern program to know, did you have kids from all over the country at Northeastern? Whereas Brown, you are really looking at kids from all over the country, right? Wouldn't that be fair to say
Yeah.
you're casting a wider net at Brown?
Yeah, I would say it's Northeastern. Coach Glavin's been there a while. He built it through the Northeast. As the program got more success, I think you talk about there was I believe Thomas Balboni was from Florida. There's a current player on the roster, Angel Cruz from Puerto Rico. Some New York, New Jersey. You'll get out there a little bit, but mostly just backyard. Northeast. Hard-nosed kids that like we just talked about. Clav and Coach Cobb have connections with coaches, people they trust. They see him play multiple times and kind of know what you're getting, right? So that's the way they built up that program into the power that it is. And I definitely want to do a good job in our backyard and in the Northeast in New England. Like I said, I think there's some really good players. I think they have a lot of upside. I think at the end of the day, we're in Providence, Rhode Island. We're going to play in some cold weather with some different circumstances, right? So people who are used to that and embrace it, are definitely people that we're going to want in our program, right? So I think we'll do that, but obviously with the academic requirements, we're going to branch out and hit the whole country. We got Texas, we got Ohio, we've got Missouri, California, all coming in, North Carolina, all in this class. So I think we've touched, just about every part of this country just in this class. And they're really talented players and great kids, right? But we're excited about the New England Northeast boys too. So yeah, Glav kind of went with the backyard model.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. But you're right. I know from dealing with the other Ivy schools that you're the kid, the combo of the academics and athletics and the brand recognition. I mean, you can go to California, say we're from Brown, and everyone knows what you're talking about, right? So
Yeah.
you do cast this wider net. Let's talk about obviously Northeastern now. You talked about Glav and Cobb a little bit. Ultimately, were you there? Correct me if I'm wrong. For 2 seasons at Northeastern.
2 seasons, yeah.
Okay.
Last 2 years.
Okay. And it's hard to encapsulate 2 years in one question, but what do you take away from your time at Northeastern?
I mean, it was like getting a master's degree in coaching and Division I program in New England, right? I think Coach Glavin and Cobb, they go back a while. They've been super loyal to that program. What they inherited wasn't just in terms of resources, how they run the operation. Like they've grown it, and from a place where he had maybe one full-time coach and a bunch of part-time guys to where last year he's got 3 full-time assistants, right? And then on the recruiting trail, how to build out the brand and really do some great things there with a lot of obstacles from a field being off campus to being in the heart of a city to New England weather and everything like those. If you can play there and coach there, it takes a special type of person, but I think it plays into their character. But just talking to Coach Glavin and Coach Cobb throughout the 2 years that I spent with them about how they built it, what it was like, how to grow it. I think Coach Glavin taught me so much more in terms of how big picture, how we built things out from staffing to support staff. I mean, that nothing was left uncovered in that program, right? From athletic training to Omar with operations to the strength program to, Poli and sports info and then Glav and the coaching staff. Like it's just from top to bottom, a true, great program, right? That they've built and every year just refine and get better. So it was cool to see kind of hear the stories of where it was, kind of on the ground floor when he was, a player, then an assistant after pro ball, and then got the head coaching chair and started rolling with that. So, unbelievable 2 years. It was new for me being on the hitting side of the baseball. I'd always been a head coach or a pitching coach. So to learn that side in a program that was loaded with talent and, a bunch of draft picks and a ton of winning baseball. So it was an unbelievable 2 years.
Was that learning the hitting side? Like I've always viewed it. I'm a 30-year coach. I feel
Yep.
like I know hitting and pitching really well. There's a
Yep.
lot I don't know. Like I've never stuffed in my brain cuts and relays. Like I'm like someone else will know that. I am not wasting the limited brain power I have. But I don't
Yeah.
feel like pitching and hitting are that much different in terms of
No, and I think a lot of what was transferable was like the scouting side of things, but they had a certain identity. Like you went in there and they had a certain identity about how they've played already, how they wanted to play, certain language that, is inherent to them that, you find yourself asking a ton of questions early on there. And I remember the first year Glav was doing a presentation at Mohegan and people were at, hey, who are you going to see tonight? I'm like, I'm going to go learn about our offense, right? Like joking, like we got to figure out how this thing rolls, right? But just to learn from them, Glav obviously has that pro side of things. Coach Bosco is unbelievable with the base running, and like I said, I don't think there was too much left uncovered with that staff, and it was like I said, a great experience to work with Mike Sirota. these high level talents, Cam Maldonado, Tyler McGregor. I'm going to miss some guys that are
Right,
awesome,
right.
but 7 draft picks this year, a couple the year before. Freshman All-Americans, 2 players of the years, broken records left and right. It was just you almost didn't know how good you had it until the dust settled, and then you start looking at it, taking over a new program and kind of seeing the difference. So it was just an unbelievable experience for me, and I think it was kind of rounded me out as a coach in a lot of ways.
I had texted Glav as Schlittler was dominating in the postseason. Like I went back and looked at his numbers at Northeastern, and I don't think you coached him, right? You weren't
No,
overlapping
I
with.
didn't.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I mean, obviously he gets drafted, but his numbers in college were very good, but not necessarily where what you would expect for as dominant as he's become as a pro.
Yeah.
But I guess we've learned that from Tarek Skubal and schemes like these guys were not power four over the top recruits back in high school, but they worked their butts off and they
Yeah.
became great, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Obviously, prior to going to Northeastern, you were at Rhode Island College 5 years, where you did a tremendous job. I mean, your 5 year run there was really impressive. Um, First of all, and I usually again start with this. Where were you born and raised? You were obviously was in Rhode
Yeah.
Island, correct?
Yeah. I was born in Connecticut, but I moved right to
Okay.
Rhode Island. Like I don't remember anything but Rhode Island, right? So, yeah, born in Connecticut, Hartford, and then moved here when I was young. Like I said, don't really remember that piece, and then grew up in Middletown, Rhode Island, right next to Newport, my whole life, right? So went to Wheaton College out of high school, played there. So lived up in Norton, Mass, and then after school, like Boston for a year, just like getting a young kid out of college, and then back to Norton, and then back to Rhode Island, right? So Wheaton for 5 years after I graduated coaching, and then like you just mentioned, back to Rhode Island College.
So was that? I mean, is Rhode Island College anywhere geographically to Middletown? Anywhere
I
close?
35 minutes. It's Rhode Island, right?
Right.
Everything's 40, 45 minutes, but yeah,
Right.
half hour, easy shot, kind of a nice ride.
And
Yeah.
obviously, that was your first head coaching job there.
Yeah.
What was from the start of taking over that program? What do you remember facing as a first time head coach running that program?
Just stuff that I assumed just happened from my time. I mean, because that's all I knew. Like I was a player there, boom, hop into coaching, and then things just kind of ran themselves to a certain point, right? Like there's so many things that you just seniors pass down from year to year, and that's what I was talking about with Coach Podolsky earlier. Just like that sustainable model that he built. It became inherently just things just happened, right? And so you go to Rick, and I'm just sitting there, and they don't even like just we're talking about how to stretch the right way. We're talking, you know what I mean? Talking about how to do these just simple things and running and having enough baseballs and machines and just building a program. I was 28 years old. I was the first full-time head coach in school history at Rick. So it was just nothing that they had ever experienced. I think administrators were sick of me by week 3, just always in their office asking for things and just building it out, right? And then COVID hitting in the middle of it, but a different model than Brown, right? Like we were able to work fast there, and I think the numbers you could bring in big numbers, right? And grab transfers and things like that. So I think the rebuild was really quick, right? We were competitive right away. We were able to build off that with some really strong high school recruiting classes, right? With Andrew Sears and Cal Perillo, who's an All-American, and Cam Santier, and some really good Terry Murray, some great players through the high school ranks. But early on, we were able to kind of patch some things together quick with some transfers from Division Ones, right?
Right.
So a unique model. We were able to build it up fast, and I think there was a lot of support from the school at the time because they saw how quickly it was moving. We had a brand new indoor facility built. I think my third or fourth year after COVID. So it was a great time there, right? And I think Rhode Island College will always have a special place in my heart just because it gave me my head coaching voice. It gave me an opportunity at 28 years old to do something. I think people slept on the job a little bit just because it was a little under the radar from the resources that were put into it early. And then for me, it was easy because all my contacts were in Rhode Island. I did a ton of work at Wheaton in Rhode Island. I think when we went to the World Series in 2017, we had 18 players from Rhode Island on that roster. So we were able to kind of take that model over to Rick and run in those same recruiting circles.
It is interesting. People probably don't realize who are outside of it. Like at certain schools, how much you have to drive the administrators crazy to
Yeah.
get stuff right. Like I remember saying like my whole goal is to have like thousands of baseballs. Like if you don't have enough baseballs to run a baseball practice, it can drive you absolutely up a wall, right? Like
Yeah.
so, you're right. I mean, I would imagine you came in and just things coming from Wheaton, which is a pretty well-oiled machine, coming in and realizing at the beginning how much you had to put your stamp on getting things to run the way you wanted it to. But
Yeah.
obviously, we're able to do that. Let's talk about a lot about Wheaton now. So do you remember back to out of high school what got you to Wheaton in the first place? Were you did you have a bunch of options? Did you pick Wheaton right away? How did that
Yeah.
whole thing happen?
Yeah, so it was, Wheaton, yeah, I do remember it. I got so junior in high school in 2007. They had just went to the World Series in '06. So they were hot off a World Series run. They had some really good pitching, some really good position players. I think Coach Pavelski was that was his first World Series team. I think he ended up going to 4 or 5. So they were kind of a hot team on the rise. They're about an hour north from me, so I think deep down it was far enough away, but close enough, to home. And I had the Naval Academy, Fordham, and then it was like Holy Cross, and then Wheaton. I had some NESCAC talks, but my SATs weren't Ivy League per se. So it was just more of a kind of see what shakes out there. Naval Academy, I decided it wasn't really what I wanted after the visit, and then so it came down to Fordham and Wheaton really, and then Fordham. It was actually Nick Ristano was the coach. You
Wow.
coached with him,
Of
right? And
course,
so
yeah.
he couldn't guarantee I was going to get in. And then I committed to Wheaton, and then I got my acceptance letter to Fordham like 3 weeks later saying you're in, right? So it was already a done deal at Wheaton. I actually went to the Naval Academy, and then the weekend after went to Wheaton, and my host, who's Tad Skelly, who's in coaching now at
Yeah,
Vassar, was the
Vassar, right.
host. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like I had a great time there, and they were going off a World Series run. Kristen Orfia was drafted out of there. It was 60 feet, 6 inches everywhere. So I was like, hey, let's go pitch and play part of a World Series program. And, that's what kind of happened. Right. So everything I signed up for is what I got.
It kind of seems like that spot back then, the best thing for you to was to look what that Wheaton meant to you now. Like going to
Yeah.
there, having that experience, then coaching there. Let's actually talk about this labrum. What happened while you were playing with the labrum?
Oh yeah, so I played hockey and football in high school, and I just kind of I dislocate. They call it a sublux. It's like it dislocates, but it goes back in. So I did
Yeah.
that a couple times in hockey and football, and then my freshman fall, I was messing around in the dorms and kind of just fell awkwardly on my arm, and like it was like the last sublux that decided to tear everything. Right, so I had to get labrum surgery, a couple pins in the front, couple in the back, and velocity took a big hit, and before I threw a pitch, it was under the knife and doing the rehab. So it was a tough start, but I think it taught me so much about how to pitch, right? Like I kind of had to reinvent myself a little bit. I was a little more of a kind of over the top downhill kind of power pitcher, right? Especially in high school, and then when I after labrum surgery, I started sinking it, learning how to pitch. The velocity wasn't quite the same right away, and then it slowly started to come back. And then I had a good run my sophomore, junior, and senior year on the mound for Wheaton.
Did it ultimately come back full to where you like? Did you ultimately feel like you were
Yeah,
fully
I
healed?
would. Yeah, I'd say the velocity was like in high school, I was probably like 86, 88, maybe tickle 89, right? And then after surgery, my freshman year, it was like probably 80, 83, and I didn't bounce back well. And then I think by my junior year, like when I was in the NECBL, I would be 86, 89, typically. But really relied on command and movement, and just the little things of pitcher, controlling the running game, fielding your position. Just I think I did a lot of the little things well, and then my stuff was good enough to compete at a high level.
It's funny, it kind of gets lost as you just said that control the running game, field your position, and yet you could watch all these baseball playoffs and controlling the running game and fielding your position comes up big time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, the guy with the Phillies, and then there's a couple of stolen bases last night, in the
Yeah.
game last night. It's like that stuff is huge, and of course, we could talk forever. There's a lot of kids that, and I understand it. If I was in high school now, I'd be throwing plyo balls all day to get my velo up. But
Yeah.
to be an elite pitcher, it's a lot more than just straight
Yeah.
up, velocity.
No, I don't like to tell my players this, especially early on, but I played in a great era. They went BB core after my freshman year, and they still had the high seam balls. So it was a good 3 year runs to pitch. High seam balls, dead bats. And then after my senior year, they shrunk the seams to try and even it out. But capitalized on a good little equipment, roundabout there with the NCAA.
Yeah, those old bats were actually dangerous. They were actually dangerous. Yeah, there was a kid, and I'll never forget. There's a kid at Central Connecticut who hit 22 home runs one year, and with the live bats, whatever we called them, and then he hit three the next year. So same
Yeah.
player, different bats.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about this then. How obviously you must have done pretty well at Wheaton to get into the NECBL, which is no joke there. So
Yeah.
did you play other summer leagues prior to
Yeah.
NECBL?
Yeah, so freshman summer, so labrum surgery, whatever, took a redshirt year, then redshirt freshman year pitched, but like still I didn't turn the corner until like 15 months after surgery. So Coach Pud was like, hey, just shut down, go back, rehab the arm again, like just get it as strong as possible. So I just played some first base down the Sunset League in Newport, had some fun and rehab my arm and was able to throw bullpens. I think I might have thrown a game or two at the end of the summer leading into that fall. Um, and so sophomore year summer, I went up to the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League with the Mohawk Valley Diamond Dogs and pitched up there. Great experience, great for me to be around some, different players from all over the country. And then junior, I had a good year at Wheaton that year. I think I went 7-1, and then junior year. So I grew up in Middletown, like I said, and we were
Yeah,
like host families for gulls. I was the bat boy,
right.
it was like the thing in town, right? And so junior year summer, it was like I think coach had a couple futures leagues team and he was like they'll sign you now and I was just like I just want to hold out. Like let's just have a big year. People always need pitching, right? So it was just like I'll just kind of bet on myself and let's have a big year and go from there. And then back then they had like a Cape tryout day. He was like, worst case scenario, we'll send you down that
Right.
thing,
I
grab
remember
it.
that. Yep.
Because I knew I was going to throw a ton that year. I think I threw 65 innings my sophomore year, ended up throwing 85 at Wheaton my junior and senior year. So it was like I knew I was going to throw a lot, and it was just let's just let it shake out and go from there. And so had an unbelievable year. We went to we lost in the national championship game, ended up going like 10-0, and so we just Newport finally called. They were like, "All right, fine, we'll take you." It was just, I mean, you roll in there and. I think we had 15 guys drafted on that pitching staff, like yeah, everyone from Vanderbilt, Stanford, and there was some sinker baller, 22-year-old from Wheaton, just
Right. Right.
that was part of the staff. But we had an unbelievable summer. We won the whole thing. I went, ended up going 3-0 for them, and had a great experience there. And obviously that led into the opportunity was with coaching them too. So it was yeah, it was great summer.
So obviously, I mean, I know in the years when placing kids in the summer was a big part of my job. For a
Yeah,
while, it was great. Then it got aggravating because it seemed like people started to have too many. And I'd have a kid that I placed call me 2 weeks in that he wasn't playing. But
yeah,
that's besides the thing. But
yeah,
Newport is the number one place to play. Like obviously, people love the Cape, but if they can play in Newport, that's
yeah.
that's their preferred spot.
Oh, that's
So
the spot.
so I do want to get to you coaching there, but let's talk about this. So you graduate Wheaton. Was there any opportunity? Was any scouts looking at you? Anything independent that you started to think of, or did you kind of know, hey, with my arm history, with my velo, like this is
Yeah.
not going to happen?
Yeah, I kind of knew, right? Like I guess that summer before in Newport, it was although I was effective and really like good. I think I one outing screwed my ERA, right? It went from like a 1.3 to a 5 overnight because I was pitching out of the pen, and I think I only threw like 25 innings that summer. Um, but you kind of get around those guys and you realize you're older than all of them. The velocity's not quite the same, right? You're not throwing 95, but it was a great run, and I went to law school for 6 weeks, and so it was
Uh-huh.
always like, when baseball's done, I'll just, this will be it, and I'll go to law school and go make some money. And then they game was taken from me, and you didn't realize I realized how much I missed it. So that's when that summer after Wheaton, I was actually an assistant with the Gulls leading into law school, and so I got like that taste of coaching, and then went to law school for 6 weeks and pulled the plug. Family, parents were a little, scratching their head a little bit, like, what's he doing, right? Taking part-time jobs just to coach at Wheaton and volunteer, and then but I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I followed it, and here we are now.
So basically, after you graduate that summer, you correct me if you're coaching a little with the Gulls and
Yeah,
realizing I kind of like this. So then, was it that fall that you started at Wheaton?
so that fall I started at Roger Williams Law School. I was there for 6 weeks,
Okay, right.
and I remember Coach Pud calling me like in between class one day, asking about one of my former teammates, like just poking around, like, what do you got on him? Good team, good teammate, good guy, and and started having those conversations, and then it was just like I wasn't feeling it, at law school, that it was something that my heart was in, and so I just started thinking, and then while I was coaching for the Gulls, it wasn't to get into coaching, it was just like, oh, just another summer in Newport, why not, right?
Right,
So.
right.
Um, and then I kind of thought back on that and it was like, and then at the time, Nick Puccio,
Yep.
he coached me at Wheaton and he got the Nichols job that summer. And I was like, no shot at Pooch, great coach. I go, hey, Pooch, you can get a Nichols job. I can get a job, so I'll just go work for Pud and we'll figure this thing out. So it was just, yeah, so that was the decision there.
This will be a hard question. You may not even know the answer. Do you feel like it was more of a calling to coach or more of this law school stuff stinks? I don't want to be doing this the rest of my life, or equal parts, or what do you
Yeah,
think?
we'll go equal. I'm not gonna sell out, but we'll go equal. I think at the time it was funny. Like I think my grandmother passed away, and then I had like an alumni game up at Wheaton that next day or something, and I was just like on the field again, just having a good time, and I was like, geez, like you can do this for a living, right? And so, like I said, it's been a windy road, a windy path, right? You never know how it's going to work out, but I'm glad I decided to stay out on the field and have some fun.
Yeah, I think you're in the right place. All right, I want to ask you kind of two more questions here. The first
Yep.
is, and I think you'll have the grasp on this, but again, Brown is new to you, the Ivy League is new to you. What does a fall what entail baseball wise in at Brown?
Yeah, no, it's no different. I mean, it's a little different in terms of some of the Ivy League rules, but we started off with individual work, so you're limited on the amount of time at the field with the guys, but they were lifting 3 days a week. And we were doing individual workouts right? So they have a couple, maybe an extra day off than what I was used to at Northeastern. But then after 2 weeks, we went right into the team session, right? So then the hours are kind of balloon out a little bit, and you're able to work with them as a group, as a whole, right? Work on that team-based stuff, build that culture. We were able to scrimmage against a team from Canada because of Ivy League rules. They give so many dates, term dates, and games that you're allowed to play. So anything that you use in the fall counts against your spring. So this was a little loophole around it being an international game.
Interesting. Good
We
work.
played them at Northeastern. So that was our one fall game against outside competition. We inter-squatted for 4 straight weeks. Like we're doing speed work once a week, lifting 3 times a week, practicing 5 days a week, inter squatting on the weekend. So it's full blown, right? Like it's a good fall session. I think this week we have our golf tournament Friday. We have a tailgate at the football game Saturday, and then we're helping out with like an Alzheimer's walk, a little community service Sunday. So this week is kind of, I would say, a transition back into that indie portion, right? A lot of individual meetings going over things and adjustments that guys need to make. So Coach Podolsky and Coach Marr meeting with the hitters, Coach McKeon meeting with the pitchers, and kind of setting up the schedule for the remainder of the semester. That's gonna, bleed into the new year and a new season, right? So it's interesting. We have like pitchers in different phases, guys
Of
building up
course,
from
totally,
injuries.
always, yes,
So
yeah.
some are fading out, some are fading up. And then we're starting to work with some guys on their swings and put some data and video in front of them and talk through some things. So it's an exciting time. It really mirrors what we did at Northeastern in terms of the flow of it. Like I said, there are some nuances with the Ivy League in terms of how to manage that piece, but we're always looking to get the most out of out of the fall, and we've had unbelievable weather, and we're able to work through a lot of things with the team. So it's been great.
And obviously, this what we just covered was the time that the coaches are allowed to be with the players. Of course,
Yeah,
you want all the players, or hopefully the players want to go above and beyond in their own, get extra lifts, extra
yeah,
mobility, extra running, extra hitting, extra stuff that they could do on
yeah.
their own. I'm assuming your setup there will allow them, if two dudes want to go hit together, they have the opportunity to always go do whatever they want, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember the first meeting. I read them. I was like, hey, I don't know if you guys look on Twitter, but Mississippi State started last week, and they're going year round, and I think the class demands are differing throughout Division I baseball, right? And so if you say you want, everyone raises their hand when they say you want to play in a regional and be, have a chance to do those things. Well, if you really mean that, this is what it's going to take. And I was able to draw back on some of the Northeastern experience and the amount of time and effort those guys put in. Like you said, the players that win championships are doing it 7 days a week. And, I remember at Northeastern, Coach Glavin would like tell guys they cannot come. You cannot come today. You have to take, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like just
right,
to
right.
manage the bodies, right? And kind of rather have to wheel these, wind these guys back than pump them up. That's always kind of the motto, right? So, just telling them they got to put in the work, and it's been great to see them do it, right? We have a great facility. We have our own facility. We have a brand new indoor turf facility, 80,000 square feet. It's a $70
Wow.
million building that's going to be done January 1st, so we'll have access to that. So they have everything they need here. They really do, and I think the bones are here. The facilities are great. There's an unbelievable backing from the alumni and some donors and our athletic director. She's aggressive and she's great and has a great vision. And the fall teams are on an unbelievable tear here. So it's things are trending here in Providence at Brown. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm from Long Island. I live in Connecticut for many years now. I go to the Cape a lot to my in-laws' house. It's as I started looking at colleges with my kids and then also just going to Providence. That area is just awesome, man. Providence
Yeah.
is awesome. The campus of Brown is just incredible. I mean, boy, you have a lot going for
Yeah.
that area and of course that university. In terms of like your 27 class, for you, I know you're like deep breath, like you got a lot. My man Frank's got a lot going on. He's got a 1 year old, like there's a
Yeah.
lot in your life. In terms of the Ivies and the 27s, like are you at the point of assume not offering? Are you just collecting names, doing research? Where do you
A little
stand?
bit of everything, right? So we have a camp the 25th. We have a good amount of kids that we've targeted that are coming that we really like and are excited to see there. Coach Podolsky was down in Florida last week with Coach Marr. I was down there as well. We've been hitting some stuff around here. We've had probably 8 visits so far. We have a couple offers out. No commitments yet. I think, you're starting to see some of the Ivies get some 27s. I think, each school probably has maybe one, maybe two, some zero, right? But
Right.
I think over the next couple weeks, months, we'll get into that, maybe 1 to 3 commitment range. And then probably the back 2/3 of that class will be, next spring. And as you mentioned, and I think from all of our backgrounds, we've always done a good job on, maybe some late bloomers. And I think when you look at the Ivy League formula with grades and test scores, like a lot of commitments are being made on kids that have 2 years of
Right.
school,
Right.
with grades and no test scores. So it's
Right.
like trying to figure out that piece and not maybe if you commit someone whose grades are maybe on the lower end of what you can get in, now you have to manage that with the rest of your class and balance that out, right? So you're trying to get the most out of your spots and the academic requirements. And so it's tough to, make 6, 7, 8 commitment choices based on limited information, right? And then, like we talked about earlier, want to see guys compete in big games, see them in high school playoff games, see them in the summer, and obviously with our camp coming up, there's a lot of good 27s going to it. There's still some room left for those who are interested, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm
then
gonna get some guys there. Yeah.
we'll have another one in January. Maybe I'm toying with maybe early February. As guys ramp up for high school and maybe doing something there as well. So some good opportunities there. And yeah, I think the 27 class will start to see some shoes drop here soon.
Yeah, no, I think the one on the 25th makes sense, and definitely, and I tell all my guys like that January, late January, early February camp is huge Not
Yep.
that you may pull an offer out of an indoor camp, but you know what? You make a relationship. The coaches start to
Yeah.
learn about you. They could track you during high school, come see you if possible, or see you early
Yeah,
summer.
those are the first high school games you're going to, right? Is like
Right.
that kid that piqued your interest or late fall, early, spring, winter or whatever, late winter that is, and then boom, it's like, all right, who are the kids that we can go see? And we got an off day, let's go see a couple guys, right?
Yeah.
So I think it just lays the foundation and start to build that relationship, like you said.
Yeah, totally. All right, Frank. First of all, I really truly thank you for spending time with me because I know, it's funny as my kids are in college and I'm an empty nester now. My life
Yeah.
goes nice and slow, man. It's like my dog demands my time, but you're in the thick of it with a new job and
Yeah.
a young child and a wife that's a college coach. So it's exciting, but you probably like to sleep in when you occasionally can, if that's ever possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't
But
happen, but
no, I'm sure it doesn't. But
someday.
yeah. All right, Frank. Thank you so much for joining and I wish you so much success this year. And I've said this to everybody. I think I might make you my first is after talking to these coaches, I always say, I'm going to come visit school and I want to come check
Yeah.
things out. But Providence you're at 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop in and
Oh
watch a
yeah.
practice or hang out and talk some
Come on
baseball.
by. Great food, great neighbor. I mean, east side of Providence, you can't beat it, right? So come on
Exactly.
out whenever you want.
All right. All right, Frank. Thanks so much, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Game Plan podcast from College Baseball Advisors. Again, I'm Wayne Mazzoni, current college baseball recruiting advisor. For more information about what I do, please visit collegebaseballadvisor.com. Again, I'd like to mention our sponsor, the Mohegan Sun Baseball Coaches Convention, January 15th to 17th, 2026 at the Mohegan Sun Casino. A lot of great presenters. There always is a lot of featured the Toronto Blue Jays coaches this year. Pete Walker, the pitching coach, has been involved for a long time. Tracy Smith from University of Michigan, Jim Penders from UConn. If you go to baseballcoachesclinic.com, you will see the past presenters, past schedule, this year's committed presenters at the event. You'll get to see a little bit about their sponsors in the event space. And of course, it's at the Mohegan Sun Casino, which is a fantastic place. If you have not been, you definitely need to go there. Thank you again so much for listening to this episode. And we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast when we have Chris Pollard, the new head baseball coach at University of Virginia.